Electric vehicles are everywhere. Many countries have incentives for electric mobility, and not even supercars escape the craze. EVs have many advantages. They produce no local emissions, are less noisy, can run on renewable energy, and are far more energy efficient than combustion engines. Yet they all share one critical drawback: their batteries. Many people consciously choose electric mobility because they are environmentally aware or simply because it saves them money over time. Other people are forced to get an electric car because of rules mandating that their company car be electric. Research shows that 40% of the cost of a new electric vehicle comes from the battery pack alone. The high-tech production chain is also global, with individual battery components being sourced in different countries, which only increases the carbon footprint. EVs need 6 times the mineral content of a combustion engine. Most EVs today are powered by lithium-ion batteries that require minerals such as lithium, nickel, cobalt, manganese, and graphite. Unfortunately, mining these materials oftentimes implies a high environmental and social cost. In Portugal, proposed lithium mining projects threaten to reshape entire regions, destroying pasture land and traditional ways of living. Open-air mines have a direct environmental impact, contaminating local air and waterways. In places with lax regulations and high levels of corruption, unsafe working conditions and child labor are not uncommon, regrettably. With the growing demand for batteries, mining operations will only become more prevalent. This should prompt an urgent reconsideration of our dependence on batteries for electric mobility. In addition to the high mineral requirements, batteries have another important drawback: they will degrade over time. Most studies suggest a degradation of roughly 1 to 3% per year, on average. That may sound like a low and acceptable figure, that is until you put things into perspective. It's possible to put 2 million kilometers on a well-maintained Mercedes-Benz built in the 1980s, and the driving experience won't be all that different from when you first got it. Many countries around the world still rely on older vehicles like this. Can you imagine putting the same number of kilometers on the best EV out there right now? If that seems like a wild idea, maybe the problem isn't electric mobility, maybe it's the batteries. Case in point, after having served the Swiss city of Zurich from 1959 to 1991, these buses continued to provide regular service in Valparaiso, Chile, until just a few years ago. This means that each of these buses had easily accumulated 2 to 3 million kilometers over their lifetime. Electric motors do not require much maintenance and emit less vibrations than combustion engines, causing less degradation on the vehicle. This makes maintenance less complex and the rolling stock lasts longer. Over their lifetime, trolleybuses are gradually upgraded, getting new seating, wheelchair access, onboard Wi-Fi, and whatever else is needed to keep up with the times. The first trolleybus, called an electromode, did not rely on batteries. It did not need to stop and charge and had virtually unlimited range. That is, as far as the overhead wire went. In 1882, Werner von Siemens demonstrated the world's first trolleybus in Berlin. Instead of carrying energy inside the vehicle, the energy source came from above. The advantages of electric power quickly came to light. Benefiting from a lot of static torque, electric motors could easily climb hills, and in the early days were used to assist horse wagons uphill. When it comes to the transport of goods, however, the most efficient way to do so was over water. Canals were dug for this purpose, and barges were traditionally pulled by oxen, mules, horses, or even by the girls next door. A single horse could pull a barge carrying the freight equivalent of 10 wagons. With the advent of railways and steam engines, self-propelled barges also appeared. However, they had one major issue. The propellers pushed water backwards, creating turbulence and wash that slowly eroded canal banks and damaged infrastructure. You see, at the time, the canals were narrow and the banks weren't fortified. They were more like ditches. Trolley boats using propellers created the same turbulence, so they were not a viable option. Engineers came up with new ideas and alternatives started to appear, such as chain towing, for example. This method combines the trolley system with an alternative means of boat propulsion. A cable or chain is laid at the bottom of the canal that is lifted and passed over rollers on the boat, which firmly grip the chain or cable. These rollers were rotated by a motor on the boat, and as they revolved, they pulled the boat along the waterway. This system was canal-friendly and did not create a wash. There was also no need for a second cable for the return of the electricity, as a chain could be used as a return conductor, making the system simpler and thus cheaper. However, these cables sometimes caused problems and were not practical in canals that had a lot of curves. The chain would also frequently come very close to the banks, causing barges to hit the banks and sustain damage. And for each separate section, the boats needed to pick up and drop the cable every time, which is not very efficient. People quickly came to the conclusion that the traditional ways of pulling vessels was often more efficient and did not destroy the banks. Naturally, this pooling method, based on classic haulage, found a more widespread use. A mechanical mule was attached to a trolley line. The machines were run either upon a track or a path on the banks of the canal. As with the animal-powered systems, 2 people were needed to operate the convoy, one on the banks driving the locomotive or truck, and one on the boat steering. In France, after some years of unsuccessful experiments with common steam locomotives on the towpath, the first electric horse was tested in 1895 on the Bourgogne Canal. The vehicle was a small 3-wheel trolley truck. It drove on the towpath on metallic wheels, without the use of rails, and could haul a barge at a speed of 2.5 to 3 kilometers an hour. This velocity was not much higher than that of an animal-hauled barge, but the electric horse could tow considerably more weight. However, the metallic wheels had a detrimental effect on the towpath, and the maintenance costs shot up. The service was discontinued in 1904 and replaced by tractors on rails. Today, a similar system is still in use in what is probably the most famous canal in the world. Trolley systems did not appear randomly. They emerged where oil was scarce or where resources were limited and electricity was easier to come by. Many trolleybuses exist in ex-Soviet Union countries, and they are still in service, sometimes 40 or 50 years later. In Quito, Ecuador, the trolleybus system known as El Trole still moves tens of thousands of passengers every day. Built in the 1990s to reduce pollution and improve urban mobility, it became one of the city's most successful transport systems. When plans were later proposed to replace parts of it with light rail, public opposition emerged. Not because trolleybuses were outdated, but simply because they worked. Sometimes simpler is just better. Modern electric vehicles have evolved a great deal, and many impressive models exist on the market. Electric mobility is without a doubt the way to a clean, sustainable future. Nevertheless, batteries come with real trade-offs, one of them being their weight. Modern EVs are often hundreds of kilograms heavier than comparable cars from 20 or 30 years ago. The added weight from the batteries creates more inertia, meaning that more energy is needed to get the car rolling. It also causes more wear and tear on the roads and tires. Even if that energy is renewable, efficiency still matters. An electric Hummer is still a Hummer. Trolley vehicles, on the other hand, do not have any of these drawbacks. While they can still have batteries for when they go off the catenary, they do not need to carry very heavy packs. Not having massive batteries, they are lighter, cheaper to acquire and maintain, and inherently more efficient. All they require is the infrastructure. So if everything is all sunshine and rainbows, why aren't there more trolley systems out there? And why did so many trolley systems disappear? Of course, trolleybus systems are not without their disadvantages. Compared to conventional motor buses, they are less flexible. When routes need to change or buses need to overtake, they can only do so where there's a catenary. Turning also requires large loops, or alternatively, rotating platform, which are actually pretty sick. Modern trolleybuses mitigate some of these issues through off-wire capability, using a small onboard battery pack that allows for a certain range away from the catenary. The visual impact of overhead wires is another common criticism, especially at intersections where the network can appear very dense and cluttered. Although modern systems have become more reliable, trolley poles can occasionally de-wire, requiring drivers to reconnect them, which adds operational complexity and delays. Initial capital costs can be higher as the infrastructure needs to be put in place, even though the vehicles often last longer than diesel buses. All of this, combined with cheap fossil fuels, caused many cities to do away with their trolleybuses. Oh yeah, and corruption. Multiple cities around the world have retired their trolleybuses. Many times not because there are better alternatives, but unfortunately due to corruption and bribery. In Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan, the existing trolleybus network already provided the perfect foundation for modern IMC trolleybuses, capable of charging while in motion and operating beyond the wired network without interruption. The last trolleybus was put out of service in late 2024. What is striking is that much of Bishkek trolleybus fleet had recently been renewed between 2013 and 2018, with $23.5 million in public financing from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD for short. The new buses that were functioning perfectly fine and still have many years of operation ahead of them have now been transferred to another city in the country. Civil society representatives filed a case with the EBRD's independent project accountability mechanism, and it is currently under review. Despite clear objections from independent groups and users of these buses, the shutdown proceeded, leaving behind not just perfectly functional infrastructure, but also putting many drivers out of work. The buses are being replaced by CNG buses running on Russian gas and battery electric buses. The value of the copper overhead wires in the city is estimated at $2 to $3 million, with questions being raised of where the funds will go. Despite this, there is still hope for trolleybuses, as cities implement trolleys for the first time or modernize their fleet. In Nancy, France, the city initially planned to replace its trolleybus corridor with a modern tramway, but the projected costs proved too high. Instead of abandoning electrification altogether, the city opted for a more pragmatic approach, upgrading and reusing the existing trolleybus infrastructure. New double-articulated trolleybuses were ordered to replace the old guided vehicles, maintaining electric operation while removing the complicated guidance system. In the historic city center, some of the ugly overhead wires were removed, with the new vehicles running on onboard batteries for those sections. The result is a hybrid solution that keeps continuous electric power where it makes sense, while using off-wire capability where flexibility or aesthetics matter most. An example of a pragmatic, best-of-both-worlds approach. Beyond transportation of people, engineers are taking inspiration from the past once again. Trolley trucks have been trialed on German and Swedish highways, the latter using in-ground systems instead of overhead wires. Mining vehicles are also once again being run on overhead electrical lines, and this could perhaps be an example of what is yet to come. Maybe the future of electric mobility isn't about bigger batteries or that one technological breakthrough. Maybe it's about remembering something that we already knew. Sometimes the smartest vehicle is the one that does not carry its own energy. Thank you so much for watching. Please do not forget to like the video if you liked it, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!